Yeah.
So it's actually, I'm building an app out of a service we're doing right now. So I call it Ravn Capital Collective. It's something that we're doing right now in Bali,
Yeah.
also North Cyprus, but mostly Bali.
Yeah.
So I call it Borg app, Borg Capital Collective. So Bali and Southeast Asia are known for landscapes and beaches. You see a pink beach there on the right. Many people fantasize about owning a villa or living in these places. And there's an abundance of untouched paradise. So the app sell development projects off plan at lightning speed with only 10% investment upfront. So we also help with like finding the land. So this, the app will also help developers spend less money on client acquisition, lowering the price, increasing quality, increasing ROI for investors and developers. So here's like, I'm just going in to, it's turned out great. The real estate market, of course, huge. I just copied this. If you go to Indonesia, we're beginning in Bali and Indonesia, where it's giant. And there's so much room for innovation and development. That's why it's so interesting. So it's an extension, the app, of Ravn Capital Collective. It's an extension. It's a system that's already working, but by using technology, we can make it so much more powerful.
And what do you mean by it's already working? So you're already connecting investors and property developers, or?
Yes. I'm filling a few gaps. I'm building automation systems, and I'm also helping them getting good qualified sales people that match the market. Let's say they're focusing on the French market. I have French sellers which are effective, which they can borrow from me on commission. So I help them with sales, which is where most of them are really lacking in automation. And since they just put a ton of money in Facebook advertising without doing proper follow-up or effective sales. So it's not only the sales, but there are a few problems. Like there's one problem is lack of quality control. So most of them say between 15 and 20% ROI. But there's so many developers which come here, they buy a piece of land, and then they ask how much you cost, how much you cost, and then just pick the cheapest construction company. And often when you take the cheapest, there might be problems like faulty construction. So after a few years, you have to use money on maintenance. So we want to have a quality guarantee and European standards, before we work with anyone. Second thing is domestic bank finance. Very few people do it, but it's possible to get it. I know a company I work with called BRICS, which are helping companies get 7%, up to 70% finance or refinance on the properties if you want to continue development. This can be automated, and you can do it with an app. Inefficient sales, so help with CRM systems. And they're only converting a fraction of the leads which they can to sales. One company which I just worked with have 30,000 leads where they have just sent one WhatsApp message and nothing else. So there's also the high barrier to entry. Like if someone invests in the stock market, you can start with $100, but villas are usually safer and far more profitable on average than the stock market. But it's far harder to get into it if they don't have the option where you can buy maybe a fraction of a villa. So I didn't know about this, but it fits very well. I've said Ravn Capital Collective, like Ravn, because I have a bird's eye view of everything. My name is Ravnstjärn, and I wanted like the app to be another name, Borg Castle, Borg Collective. But then I found I never watched Star Trek, but Borg is apparently famous for nerds who follow Star Trek. The Borg Collective is they take all the technology which they come in contact with and take all the best pieces. That's what I'm doing right now in Bali as I build CRM systems. I get like bird's eye view of everything. So you instantly assimilate all the technology. And I see what works because they have huge ad budgets. So I see exactly what markets converts, what the salespeople are doing, what they're texting. Yeah, so when we work with them, and some of them spend over $2,000 a day on ad spend. So I get really good insight by being a consultant and setting up CRM systems for building the app. It's like when you build Uber, you have to know how the taxi system works and the problems. So that's what I'm knowing before it, with having a bird's eye system of all the CRM systems and how they work. So the team I'm building is like, I just go to these events, network entrepreneurial events, property events, and I find people which are not the salespeople, but just like conversational people and people I think who would be good at talking to investors, because it's actually the easiest thing ever when you talk to people interested in buying a villa. You just need to listen what they want and build a relationship, and then if you work with other companies, you just build a relationship, and then you can pass them on to their people after they're qualified. So they don't need much training. I just want people who know the market, like George is from the UK, she knows the UK market. Angela is from Australia, but born in Jakarta, speaks Indonesian, knows Australia, but grew up in Perth. So I try to match people with the markets. And that's how far I got.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it, first of all, it's still a messy. You know that it's still messy, right? But I get what you're doing, and I think you're right that this process of finding people that want to invest in villas there, and I see these ads, they also try to target people like me, and and I believe what you're saying, that it's highly inefficient, and your value prop is basically that you can convert those better, right? That you can get $1,000 in, and where they maybe get $2,000 out, you can get 5,000 out because you know how to handle these leads. Yeah. I get that. I totally get that. Also about the regulation or whatever. I think the other parts of it is more where you have to be more clear on what you're going to do, right? So if you're pitching to people like me, then what are we investing into? Are we investing into where you based? Faroe Islands? I can't remember where you based.
I was born in the Faroe Islands, but I lived like for 13 years in Copenhagen.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. So, for instance, are you having a Danish company? What are the plans? Also, because I think when you want to do so much, like you are, like solving, you also talk about fractional investment, right? Because now which is a completely different opportunity. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying, I think if you are out pitching this, I think you should try to do it in different stages, like saying, stage 1, we're doing this. Stage 2, we're doing this. Stage 3, we're doing that. And I need 2 million krona, whatever, to do stage 1, right? Because I think people would, that's just my perception, people would be a little bit scared about if you want to do too much at first, right?
Yeah.
Because it's clear that you have this background for making CRM system for these property developers. So you know the market, you know what they're bad at exactly. Yeah. But then when you introduce stuff like the legal thing out there in making foreigners buy, in financing, in fractional investment, it suddenly becomes very big, which is good in the long term. So I think I would sell that vision and saying, hey, but as a starting point, we're doing ABC, right?
Yeah.
I want maybe start selling leads to these property developers. I don't know what your first stop is, but if I should start,
I can tell the first thing I'm doing is actually, I've been working marketing for a long time, and I have leads. So I say I can help you get clients. All you have to do is just pick up the phone. I do an activation. So last Wednesday I did with 2 French engineers who have their first development, a couple, but they've done a lot in Spain. So I shot out to my French leads, all my French leads, 450 of them, and I had them call them instantly. and they got so many meetings, we had to stop it halfway through, and we might start again to get today. So for me, it's very easy to create business. I just say, let's do an activation, and sometimes they have dead leads. Many of them, I say, I can activate them for you.
That's all what I do, and I want to talk less about the app, because I think the app, it's a little bit unclear. If I should buy a villa in Bali, I'm not in the market for that. You know, I want to talk to the property developers and all that, and you know, maybe it's just me who's cynical, but I think the app itself is not really the value you're having right now, right? The value you're having now is you have leads, you know how to generate leads efficiently, and you know all these property developers are really shit at doing this, right?
Yeah.
So if I were you, and you sort of, you can take a bigger part of the value chain gradually, right? Right now you're selling CM systems, so you get basically nothing, right? But if you start selling quality lead, and you can basically get a bigger pie or share of the pie, right?
Yeah.
So I think if I were you, and if I were looking for investors, I would be more precise in where you're right now. And for instance, this experiment, right? And saying, hey, if I can just make it very clear for the investors, saying, hey, if I can generate 100 leads that generates 20 sales in Indonesia, that is worth, I don't know what 20, what are they willing to pay for a lead?
It's 5% commission up to 8%. In North Cyprus, it can be even higher. So the percentages are good, but that's like,
so 20 times 5%, that is 100%. That's equal to the price of a villa, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way I would do it. I would basically say, hey, I have this unique background in one or two, you know, I will have, look, I have this unique background. I actually developing CM system for those. Look, these people don't know what they're doing in regard to that. I have this grand vision of taking a big share of the pie, but my first step in that is actually selling them high quality leads. I can get it at that price. They're willing to pay so much. To do that, I need some people. I have those. But if I raise this round, we can generate so much revenue for that. And then basically say there's a phase 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I will talk a little bit less about your name of this borg. I think it's irrelevant. I'm sorry, but
I agree.
I would talk a little bit less about the app, because I think the app is part of the grand vision of where you want to be, but it's not the starting point. But that's just me.
Yeah.
But you remember, early stage investment is all about people having unique experiences and passion and interest in something. And that's really what you should talk about, right? That you have done this and built this CM system for all those, and you've seen this gap in the market. Because I think you're right. I think you're right that you can nurse these leads better than the individual developers, right? So maybe they're not saying, maybe they signed up for looking at an app in Bali, right, in December, but they cool off or whatever, but they're still in your system, and maybe you're selling a villa to them in France in 1 year's time, right?
Yeah. The key is being able to sell off plan, because if you're good, you can negotiate that you buy a land and you sell it with the villas on it, and then you pay for the land when you sell the villas. So you might have to pay a deposit. So all you have to do is pay for the architecture design and start the ads. If you can do that, you can invest so little and just get profit from the entire project. So the entire key is being able to sell off plan. And that's where I want to place my strength: finding land, good land, and being able to sell it off plan.
Yeah, I get that, but if you have to convince investors, I think there's a step before that. That's just me. I think there's a step before that where you sell some quality leads to these people, because right now you have been a sub-supplier developing, as I understand it, you have been developing CM systems for them, right?
Yeah.
And now you want to do part of that process themselves. You want to go to them and say, hey, dear Pedro, I can get you leads, and that will cost you X thousand, whatever. I think you have to prove that before you find people that will give you money to buy land. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of building up credibility, right? You're sort
Yeah.
of changing from what you're doing now to something else. And I think, but that's just me. That's a plan I would build if I were in your shoes. I would sort of have a slide saying, I do now this, and I already make this test. As you said, you had this test with the French leads. And I want to do this and show over the next 6-9 months that I can generate this and actually have a stable income there. And when I've shown I can generate that, I take the next share of the pie, which is, hey, I want to buy 5 pieces of land, right?
Yeah. So just focus on the lead generation.
But yeah, again, I'm just one data point. That's just what I would if I were you, right? Because finding money from investors to buy land in Bali out of the blue, I think it's hard. I think it's much easier saying you're doing this in steps.
No, the reason I said is I have actually 2 which are interested in using me. One is very serious. He says in 1 month he'll sell his property in Australia for 700,000, and he wants my help to become a developer in Bali. So I'll join him like as a consultant. I will find him land, and I will have locals negotiate a deposit, so he can buy like a bigger piece of land and pay the rest afterwards.
And will you then also find him buyers for the villa? Is that also?
Yes, I will also sell them off land. So I will help him find land, and I will help him find the right architect and get it signed. And he's not new in the game. He's been doing it in Australia. He wants to move to Bali. He already purchased a villa in Bali. He was supposed to buy from one of my clients. One of my clients didn't have any salespeople, so I did the sales calls myself.
Yeah.
So I got to meet them. And he's really keen on trying out Bali. Buying a land.
Also, yeah. But that also makes sense, right? Because there you're sort of working with him instead of you buying the land, but you're sort of doing the sales and all that for him. You know, that's a perfect first step, right? And then after you have done this 2-3 times, whatever, hey, now you go to your investors in 1 year and say, look, I've proven I could do this. Now I want to do something else. At least that, I think you should see this as you're sort of building up credibility in this space, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. It's about now I'm in like learning as much as I can, and before I think too big about the app and stuff.
Yeah, cool.